G'day guys and gal! The superhumans of 40k often get all the praise and credit for being the heroes of the setting, the custodian guard, the space marines, and even the respectfully named bolter bitches. However, it's kinda easy to be a hero when you literally have fear torn out of you and in its place is an extra heart or golden armor or enough faith that your god literally starts manifesting powers within you. But what about the rank and file mortal soldiers, the Guardsmen, those whose lives are often short-lived and are thrown by the billions into the most obscene war zones, the ones who push through, conquer the enemy, and hold their heads up high? They are the real heroes, so I thought today why not honor 10 of them. Before I get started, if you're still looking for a fantastic Christmas gift for someone cool or just something for yourself, look no further as I've partnered up with Geology today and they're running their ungodly 100% off offer. So you can literally get a Chrissy present or present for yourself for free. But what is Geology and why should you care? Geology is a men's skincare brand that knows us guys are useless when it comes to what to put on our face and when. So it gets us to fill out a quick survey and bam, a custom skincare routine is sent to your door with easy to follow instructions. As I am in Australia and we don't have an ozone layer, which yeah, that sucks, my morning cream has sunscreen in it. They aren't just caveman formulas either. I literally have my gal pals ask me to get them some as it's full of ingredients that actually work, as you can see by their many awards as well as my own results. I feel like my skin looks better now than it did 5 years ago, which is honestly pretty wild. Geology also has a range of awesome, nice smelling body washes, deodorants and shampoos. And with Geology being 100% off when you use my link and code Majorkill100, there has never been a better time to jump in and try it. Cheers to Geology for sponsoring this video. Today we'll go over 10 of the most heroic guardsmen in 40k. Now this isn't necessarily the top most powerful, but more so the ones that have shown that just because you aren't an 8-foot tall demigod doesn't mean you can't be an absolute beast. Let's get into it. Now, a lot of people may be wondering how the Death Corps of Krieg were founded. After all, Krieg used to be a verdant hive world. Well, long story short, Krieg was so powerful that it declared independence from the Imperium, and the Imperium itself was unsure what to do, as retaking it would be extremely costly, and it also wasn't a chaos uprising. So they simply told the last loyalist commander on the planet, Colonel Jurten, to retake the planet by any means necessary. Jurten, seeing that his position was poor and his forces would be crushed soon, made a pretty bold decision in the name of duty. He nuclear holocausted Krieg, his own world, with his base and army being prepared for it. The traitors were not. Most of them died in nuclear fire and the survivors were reeling as Krieg collapsed and became a death world. The odds were now even and Jurten led his loyalists in a 500-year campaign to retake the planet, trench by bloody trench, forging the iron that would become the Death Corps of Krieg. Now Jurten would die at some point. As he lay on his deathbed, he authorized the Vita Womb program, making the Krieg army more or less an army of vat-born clones. It's heavily implied that he himself provided the genetic material, meaning all Kriegsmen are clones of Jurten. Thus he has never stopped fighting for his world and fighting to atone for his failures and what he was forced to do. Even in death, duty doesn't end. Heavy shit. Now I wanted to talk about a man who thinks he's the last thing from a hero, but is actually one of the greatest heroes of the Imperium, Caiaphas Cain. Now if you haven't read his books and only seen his memes, you probably think he trips over and accidentally kills an avatar of Cain with his commissar's hat, which honestly, knowing the avatars, I wouldn't be surprised. However, it is a lot more than that. Cain does feel like an imposter, and he does subtly try to avoid being put in danger, but when danger finds him, he steps up and handles it amazingly. He doesn't ever freeze or hesitate. He will even try downplay it, saying stuff like, well, if I don't volunteer for this suicide mission, people might think I'm a pussy, and we can't have that. Or, well, if I don't face off against the leader of this Chaos Warband face to face, he will destroy the world, and I'm on the world, so I can't have that. But time and time again, Cain steps up, saving the day. Sure, he does get lucky here and there, but I guarantee if you put 1 million people through the exact same situations as him, only Cain would come out alive. He's also considered, not by himself, one of the greatest mortal swordsmen in the galaxy, able to outduel space marines, which is unheard of. Ironically, despite Cain feeling like his reputation is fraudulent and he only likes to embrace it due to the comforts and position it brings him, he has actually earned it many times over and is the true hero of the Imperium. Now, although Lord Solar Macarius was created as a bit of a meme character, basically Space Alexander the Great, he also ended up being one of the greatest generals in the entire Imperium. And no, I'm not just referring to mortal generals, I'm also including Primarchs in that. See, during the 41st millennium, mankind wasn't doing so hot. They had gone through multiple shit times during the past few thousand years, and the idea of glory and a golden age was long gone. However, this dude pops up out of nowhere, starts conquering bitches left, right, and center, before rizzing up the High Lords so hard that he was named successor to the Lord Solar, the Lord Solar being the title of Warlord of the Imperium. When the current Lord Solar died in glorious battle, Macarius rose up and decided to lead the greatest crusade mankind had seen in over 10,000 years, conquering over 1,000 worlds in a short span of time. I think it came to like a world conquered per week or something retarded like that, maybe more. The only reason Macarius stopped conquering was because they reached the edge of the galaxy and beyond there was only darkness. Even then he still wanted to push forward, however his men were like, bruh. Now Macarius' death is a bit of a cover-up. It seems that while bravely fighting, he was infected with Nurgle-like diseases that were going to make him look ugly and fat and shit. So the Imperium had him assassinated so that the Imperium's memory of him would be a glorious martyr. Now there was a bit of a cheeky civil war when he died, with various warlords under him trying to claim pockets of territory that he had conquered. But that isn't his fault, so it's fine. Or maybe it is, but I will not sally his name. I would be a heretic deserving a nail gun to my dickhole if I did not include a Lannis person, perhaps the bravest guardsman to ever live. Now you may argue that Alanius was a perpetual and thus could not die, so it's not really bravery. However, not all perpetuals were the same, and Alanius just seemed to be of the variety that didn't age, however would not regenerate, as we never actually see a reference to him dying and healing, or even rapidly recovering from an injury, and he genuinely seems very concerned about his near-death experiences, unlike the other perpetuals who are incredibly unbothered by it. Despite that, Alanius fought in pretty much every war he could. The World Wars, charging trench lines with his bayonet, he led the Argonauts on their ancient quests, was a guardsman in the Imperial Army and fought in the Great Crusade, but most awesome of all, he squared up against Horus, putting himself in front of the Emperor to protect his friend and open fire, fully auto, on Horus's bold ass. Now obviously it didn't do much, and then Horus turned him into a red mist, which he then never regenerated from, adding weight to the theory that he wasn't actually a regenerative perpetual, thus was obscenely brave to not only stand up against Horus, but also be at the forefront of every war for the last 40,000 years. Now a more niche guardsman who was also a fucking legend, although short-lived. Alanius Piers. Yes, there are two awesome Alanius Ps. He fought during the Siege of Terra and had a very powerful gun that could actually kill Space Marines, so the dude had made a good showing of himself. He was also incredibly brave and nonchalant, helping to guide and protect a remembrancer called Harry, who would come to document the front lines. Another interesting fact about this Ollie is that he was one of the only guardsmen who could see Genetia Kroll. She was the greatest of the Sisters of Silence, their leader. Her blankness was so absolute that she was invisible to almost everyone, meaning she would run through a battlefield hacking and slashing, and the enemies were not even sure what had killed them, and to an outside person, it would appear like the enemies were just being diced apart by some unseen force. For some reason, Ollie could see her though, something she found interesting, and he even thought she was a god of some sort. Tragically, Genetia, Ollie, and a bunch of other awesome characters were forced to hold a hopeless last stand at one of the walls in order to bait the Sons of Horus High Command into a kill zone. Rogel had to make the defense look convincing, otherwise it would look suspicious. So as all of his comrades died around him, Ollie was the last man standing. He stood in front of a flag of the Emperor and faced down Angron, demon primarch of the World Eaters. Angron began to charge at Ollie. Ollie started calling Angron a big-ass red piece of shit bitch, all the while hoping Genetia would come. However, tragically, she was dead by this point. Angron actually slowed his charge because he was so bewildered that this single guardsman was holding his ground. He was roaring, doing all his scary monster shit that would make most men drop dead in fear, but Ollie kept firing and reloading, punching little holes in Angron. Ollie would keep firing and keep cursing until Angron splattered him, the banner of the Emperor falling to the ground. Now, it actually looked like GW was going to retcon the guardsman saving the Emperor by saying it was a mythical retelling of this moment. Alanius having the same name, Angron being Horus, the Emperor being the banner, but then it happened like that in the lore anyway, so I think it was just a cool moment of GW having some fun. Either way, being called Ollie in 40k apparently makes you a badass. This list would be woefully incomplete without the legendary Commissar Yarrick, the ultimate rival of Ghazghkull. I love the fact that the arch rival of the #1 orc in the setting isn't a Primarch or Chapter Master or even Space Marine. It's an extremely cranky Commissar who was probably 1 year off retirement before Ghazghkull invaded Armageddon. Orcs live for a good fight, so much so that if someone gives them one, they often will show mercy so they can continue having fun. Yarrick was one such man, constantly defying Ghazghkull, holding positions and fortresses that should have been unholdable. The mad lad even lost his arm and simply took a new one off a dead orc he had killed. Ghazghkull respected Yarrick so much that even when he captured him and had him at his mercy, he allowed Yarrick to live, even predicting Yarrick would lead a prisoner uprising and almost escape, which he nearly did. Upon recapturing Yarrick, Ghazghkull let him free and he was enjoying the rivalry so much. That does make you wonder what Ghazghkull's reaction to Yarrick's apparent death will be. I really hope Angron did it. Seeing an Angron-Ghazghkull throwdown would be awesome. Even though he is a bit of a meme, memes can still be brave, so I wanted to include Sly Mabo. Pew pew pew. There are things in Warhammer 40k's lore you're supposed to take seriously. Sly is not one of those things. He is a legendary Catachan jungle fighter, which are already some of the best guardsmen there are. He's often called a one-man army and will basically solo fuck everything to death. He's kind of like a mix of space Chuck Norris and Rambo, with achievements such as solo killing a Dark Eldar raiding army, hunting lictors for sport with just a knife, assassinating war bosses on numerous occasions and bringing back their heads, destroying entire Tau forces single-handedly. The dude has won the Star of Terror, the highest honor, multiple times. The dude even single-handedly took down a Banelord Titan, one of the greatest Chaos Titan variants. The details of that event have been heavily redacted. He cuts through traitor Astartes like a katana through a newborn, and he does it with no real equipment, no armor, a pistol, and a poisoned blade, which I don't know why it needs to be poisoned since he literally just hacks them apart anyway. Sure, he may be a Mary Sue, but doing all of what he does takes some serious balls. Now I was struggling to decide whether to put Ozaka Creed, Castellan of Cadia, or his Color Sergeant Krell on this list, so I'll put them both here together. Cadia was one of the most besieged and dangerous worlds in the Imperium. Its entire culture was dedicated headed to war, as it was literally the front gate to hell. The man who could lead such a world had to be a fucking hero, and by God he was. But he was a hero because of Krell as well, who helped plug in many of Azaka's shortcomings. Azaka was an insomniac alcoholic who was considered incredibly unpleasant and hard to work with, often not listening to advisors even if they were more specialized in certain areas. Krell would sometimes drug Krieg to knock him out for a bit so he'd actually sleep. Anyway, unlike most commanders, Azaka was always keen to go on the front line, inspire his men, and felt no fear. During the fall of Cadia, when a Cornite demon prince had ripped through their defenses and was destroying the Null Array, Creed was like, "Fuck this, everyone grab a gun and follow me," with all of his support staff in shock. Likewise, when Abaddon was attacking the Null Array later on, Azaka squared up against him. Dude was a legend, but nothing was as legendary as Sergeant Krell's death. Abaddon hated Creed so much, as he was a mortal defying him, which directly opposed Abaddon's view that Space Marines were superior. So he personally attacked Creed's position. Krell covered Creed's escape and was grabbed by Abaddon, who wanted to save the kill. Well, that turned out to be a mistake, as Krell was more or less making a reference to how this was going to be a glorious death, as he was going to be slain by the same claw that slew Sanguinius and touched the Emperor. Abaddon said, "I am not a failure like Horus was." To which Krell replied, "Oh yeah? Why do you dress like him then?" This enraged Abaddon, who killed Krell instantly. Such a sick but tragic death. Both men were heroes. Sure, Cadia fell, but the price the traitors paid was 1,000 times higher than it would have been if it wasn't for these two. Last but not least, we have Ibrium Gaunt, the leader of Gaunt's ghosts. Tanith was a pretty peaceful world that had recently grown enough to create its first Guardsmen regiments. However, Tanith was attacked and destroyed, Gaunt saving just enough men to form the Tanith First and Only, his ghosts. A green, inexperienced force of soldiers that Gaunt would turn into one of the deadliest fighting forces in the galaxy. Like, there's literally a scene where they ambush a traitor Marine squad and slay all of them with 0 casualties. And it wasn't like they had 1,000 dudes with rockets. The numbers are pretty even, and by all accounts, the Space Marines should have massacred them. But such was their tenacity and will under Gaunt that they obliterated them. But why was Gaunt such an effective hero? Well, Gaunt would always do what needed to be done. When he found out his own uncle was responsible for his father's death, he executed his uncle as a traitor, despite his uncle being a father figure to him. Anyone who worked with Gaunt saw his raw, unbreakable will, with warlords and generals trusting him with the most important missions. Whenever a superior of his would die, on their deathbed they would promote Gaunt to a new higher rank. It became a bit of a trend actually. Now, I haven't read Gaunt's Ghosts yet. It's on my list after the other 500 Warhammer books to get through, so I don't want to try dive too deep into the lore I'm not super on top of, but one thing is clear, this guy is a fucking hero. If you enjoyed the video and you want to support the channel, then pick up a lore art calendar. Only a few days left before these are gone for good. Join the Discord for more memes and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.